Hey guys, Luetin here, and today I'm going to be talking about some more Star Citizen stuff, and this is actually a collab video today. I'm going to be joined by TonyMo, and if you haven't checked out his channel before, you should really go and have a look at it. He covers armor, Star Citizen, and a load of other stuff. If you like my channel and the kind of things that I do, I think you'll absolutely be interested in that as well. But obviously Star Citizen, there's so much to talk about with that game, and obviously the multiplayer aspect is coming in for more and more people. They just rolled it out to a load more accounts recently, but what we're thinking about today is some of the way in which that feels, the kind of the way the ships feel, the way they interact with each other, both in a fighting capacity and just the way in which you pilot them. So Tony, do you want to tell us sort of what you were thinking about there, what you were feeling about the ships themselves, and kind of where we're going with the multiplayer aspect?
Yeah, I think watching some of your stream and seeing some of the footage, since I haven't gotten my hands on it just yet, but it's really obvious. There's this sort of disconnect between what we've been told about the way that the ships were going to break down and the way combat was going to go and the way it actually seems to be working inside of Arena Commander. I mean, when we look at all the time they spent showing us, where the wings are going to break off, your shields are going to break down, and then people are inside of Arena Commander being one-shotted, and it's just like instant death and very little feedback, and I find that very strange. And we were talking how there's a lot of people saying, well, it's going to be different than the persistent universe, and I don't see that as a necessary thing. I don't understand their focus there. Again, still working with a very early alpha, so I would like to see that change, but it just feels so strange to be in a game where you want the flying to be a very strategic thing, and the pilot wins. Yeah, you want the dogfighting, and it's just not there right now. It's so one shot, like CS Counter-Strike going on, just like first person around the asteroid to get the headshot off wins.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people that watch my video about the 300i this week will have seen that it's so powerful, it's absolutely dominating. Now they are going to release a new patch very, very soon, actually, for the Arena Commander multiplayer, and so we should see some good changes there. I'm going to be interested to see how that works. I think they're going to do some changes with the Hornet and the power plant and the way in which some of those weapons are functioning, because they've seen how the 300i is dominating, and it's just so ridiculously powerful. However, one thing that I'm still not overconfident about whether or not they're going to change it is the way in which the weapons can currently one hit. And it seems to be that the Omniskis, more than anything else with the 300i, seem to do this, where you'll be, you fire at another person and it just one hits them, whether they even seem to have their full shields or not. And so it's a little confusing. Now, obviously we need to say that this is, this is such an early stage. You could perhaps not even call it like a sort of pre-alpha, really. We're so very, very early on. But this is still valuable feedback to give to them, because this is a period where they can change it. It's not so far ahead. This is the kind of development build time. So these kind of changes can come in here. And Tony, you were sort of talking as well about the way in which the ships sort of move and feel as well. And again, this is times that they can change it. So do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I think the physics are definitely on the right path. Like we were saying, the fact the way the ship carries over, and you have to deal with all of the effects of Newtonian flight. But there's just something about the ships that, again, it leads to the whole idea of what a dogfight should feel like. You should feel like you're pushing the ship to the limits, and you're understanding what you can turn and where you can bank and where you can't. And that just doesn't feel there. I feel like, I don't want to say weight behind the ships, because again, we are technically in space, we're weightless, but at the same time, you still have thrusters that are moving a force, through space, and the mass of that space is going to change, the way that the thrusters and how much force it takes, and we just don't have that feedback yet. I feel.
Yeah.
I feel like it's gotten better since that last patch, but it's still not there. And again, this is something though that Chris Roberts has talked a lot about. The 6 degrees of freedom and full Newtonian actually coming in. So again, hopefully that's something we'll see moving in the future. But like you said, it doesn't really hurt to discuss these things. This is the feedback that's going to be valuable to them, moving through these stages.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now, as I say, I seem to have I would say that it's inconsistent more than necessarily, just gone bad one way or the other. Because I have had rounds that have been very, very good. In fact, even actually not bad from a dogfighting point of view, that will have like ships flying around one another and past one another, and you're coming up to a battle and you sort of fire in and roll through it. And so I have had those moments where it's been like that. But then again, you have the rounds which are not like that at all, and it's people just like sniping you from far, far away. And again, some people would say, well, that's fine, you know, it's fine to play in that aspect, and it's true. But there's been some questioning, some people are voicing things as well about sort of damage notifications, so that you don't realise you're getting damaged. If you watch back some of my footage from the rounds and videos that I've posted, again, people see this, that, you know, I'm flying along and I'm engaging targets, and then all of a sudden, bam, just dead. And there was no notification that you were taking any damage or anything whatsoever. I had full shields up, so it's very, very confusing there as to what sort of is happening. So again, these are all things that can kind of be refined back and so on. But right now, I do feel in terms of the actual piloting, the way that the ships fly feels okay. Some comments that I've had have been people being saying like, well, it doesn't really feel like you're moving at all, and it's like, well, yeah, that's that's just part of space flight. When you're in that kind of, you have no kind of physical points of reference for distance. So unless you're actually sort of near an asteroid field or a ship or something like that, it doesn't really feel like you're moving, because you're traveling through sort of stuff that you can't really see. There's no kind of reference of distance there at all until you come up to other objects, and then you do. But yeah, I mean, you were talking about the mass and the way that the ships feel. I mean, what was your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you talk about the speed, and I think definitely kind of goes together. And I think, like you said, it's a lot to do with smaller pieces of feedback on all of these things, you know, on like, how is my ship getting hit? What can I do there? And I'm going to make a comparison to Elite Dangerous. I know I'm going to be like burned at the stake for this for a lot of SC fans, but I mean, the fact is that game is really far ahead in terms of their actual flight system. And some of the things they do, you know, Star Citizen has a really great visual G-force system, which again helps, you know, with just that feeling of being in the ship. But there's not a lot of other feedback going on there. I feel it's just visual. You know, when you're pulling those tight Gs, there's not enough being done to make my character feel like he's pressed into the seat. And I think that, you know, when people start talking about speed in that as well, that's actually a good segue there, because when we talk about the speed of the ships, this is something we know that they've mentioned, you know, could increase. And at the same time, as you said, you're in space. And I know one of the things that Chris Roberts and also the guy who's designing essentially the flight system mentioned is that they do plan on putting, like, you know, more space dust in the game. Just those smaller elements of feedback. And again, going back to Elite, one of the things that they've done when you talk about, you know, the ship taking damage and breaking down slowly is your shields go down. Obviously, a very significant warning comes from your ship. Shields are down, you know, they need to go back up. But then you start to see your canopy starts to crack, and the hull starts to take damage. And once that becomes critical, your ship's kind of just dead mass floating in space, and it breaks apart and you die. And I'd like to think that that's definitely the direction that, you know, Star Citizen's planning on going. But that one-shot thing, though, that is something that really does kind of, I'd hope it's just a bug. I find it weird, like that you mentioned that people are actually being okay with that. To me, it's just like, no, that's unacceptable, you know. Yeah. It has to be some sort of a bug, and hopefully it'll just go away.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the thing is as well is that there has been talk around, and I should point out this is not sort of confirmed and hard written, but it's been sort of spoken about that, will the persistent universe, which is obviously going to be the main sort of multiplayer aspect of Star Citizen, the main sort of universe world, that whether or not the combat in that situation will be different to Arena Commander. Many people have kind of likened Arena Commander almost to sort of like an arcade module where it's all about just that sort of dogfighting aspect, which of course it is. But many people have been sort of saying about, yeah, well, this is going to feel different, it's going to enact differently than it would the persistent universe. And if that is true, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't really feel like that should be the case. I feel that the fighting within Arena Commander should represent the persistent universe, and vice versa. And so I guess that's why with Arena Commander I've been a little bit sort of like, it kind of didn't feel how I expected it to from that point of view. The combat was over quicker than I expected, and these kind of things. And I'm hoping that, again, this is just an early, it is a very, very early build, but I'm hoping that it will change from that point of view back towards perhaps some longer, more interesting battles where, you know, you really do have to sort of fly around one another, and it's over in a few, you know, you have to sort of put some kind of you know, movement tactics in there as well, not just who can get the first shots in. You know, that's really what I hope it moves away from. And I hope for many reasons that changes, mainly because in the persistent universe you don't want to be piloting along with a valuable ore supply or something like that in your ship, and all of a sudden two ships come out of nowhere and it's just like bam bam, you're dead, and you never had a chance to do anything. I really don't want that to be the case. I don't want it to be the case that we're basically like DayZ in space, where, you know, it's like as soon as you see another player, bam, you're dead. You know, we don't want it to be that case. I don't think that would. I don't think they want it to be either. I think we won't see that. But I think it's going to be important that we make these changes and we see that, you know, change to the combat system, basically.
Yeah, when you mentioned the one-shotting thing too, a thing that I find very interesting is, think it's one of the things that lends itself to the fact that it's definitely not going to stay like that, is that, again, the best setup you can run is 3 lasers, 3 laser cannons on the 300i, when the fact is that lasers in Star Citizen have already been, we've been told by Chris Roberts that yes, we're going to follow the whole idea of plasma versus plasma is bad, and the idea being that a laser wouldn't actually be the best tool for breaking down a shield. You'd use something different. You'd use like a hard cannon, and it's interesting that 3 lasers is able to like sort of insta-pierce the the shields and just kind of destroy the ship almost instantly.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that the guy said to me today is that it's the game is going to be about balance. It's going to be all about balance. And one thing that is really positive so far is that they respond very quickly to making changes and adjustments. And I guess that's because we are also still in the dev period. It's not so much we've in a full release. But I think it is really positive that they make these changes so quickly and they listen to the community so much. And I really hope that, again, that's just the way we are going forward. I also think it's a really positive thing that they perhaps didn't even really want to release where we are at this time, but they have done, because one way or another it's allowing this kind of feedback and this kind of testing period. It's just going to go on and on, and we are at a point in time where we could make major changes and it wouldn't be a big deal. They can make these changes right now and still have time to kind of refine it back again. And so yeah, I think that's a really good thing for it.
I think it's a good note, like you said, to say there that I think when they launched the project and they gave that 2015 release date, and it was just 2 years, a lot of people got on board thinking like, the progress is going to be so quick. And I, for one, was one of those people who always sat there and said, there's no way. Like, with what you want to do, 2015 is not happening, and I'm fine with that, But a lot of people, I think, were instantly thrown and have said to themselves in their head now, but like, why isn't it further on, And it's like, I think we need to just accept the fact that, it's going to be later than that. We know now that it's going to be, the release date has been moved much further.
Yeah.
For the final build anyways, and that things are just going to take time. And again, like you said, dates that they're releasing is pretty outstanding at this stage. To see a developer release an update like every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, that's pretty rare. I mean, when you look at a lot of the games in early access on Steam right now, they're getting updates like once every month, and a lot of these games actually have like publishers behind them. Most of them aren't indie, and they have a lot of money going behind them, more than Star Citizen, and they're getting updates like once every 3 months, and they're not changing the things that everyone was freaking out about. Like, I'm pretty confident that in that next patch, we'll see things like the damage model being refined and the physics and a lot of that stuff just starting to come together already. They've obviously looked at what we're saying. They see the forums, they see the videos, and I'm hoping that, they make that direct change, because that's what they've done in the past. It's just what they're known for at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And that is one thing that I feel is really positive. The other thing that is fantastic as well, just this is a little off topic, but I just think it's so amazing the amount of openness with the development has been going on. I mean, they've said from the start, obviously they wanted to do a full open development, but it's really been so unbelievably open. I know developers in various different games at the moment, and from having spoken about the way in which they are acting with Star Citizen, these guys have been like, I can't believe the way that they're working, because from their point of view it's just so alien. It's just a totally different way of working, but it's so good to do that because it allows everybody to be on the same page and we see where we're going. There's no kind of confusion and stuff, they're just, it's all right there for everybody. But with that in mind, one thing that we do keep seeing right now is concept ships. We saw the Jan Scout the other day, and this week it's the Gladius. Okay, so we've got these concept ships which aren't currently hangar ready, but they're being pledged and sold to the public. Now, you had some thoughts about this with the quantity of ships. Now, they've said long term they'd like to see perhaps around like maybe 100 ships total, something like that, with some of that I think contained within variants of ships. But regardless, I mean, they basically got a lot of ships to make. But I guess the question really is like, are all the resources being best spent into those ships? I mean, from my point of view, like I said to you before, I think it was that, they're going to have to design this stuff one way or the other. But I guess there is a question there of, is this the right time to be sort of fully developing this stuff? Could we be working on other things? I mean, what do you think about it?
Yeah, it's funny I brought that up, and then right when you said that, it was like, there is that thought for me, I mean, deep down, especially when, again, I look at the progress of Elite, and I know that the stage that Elite is at is because they've focused so much of their efforts on just getting everything else. They built one ship, they threw it into the alpha, they let people fly it, and the game was a mess when it first came out. And now they've refined that because they just had that one ship to focus on, and they put their focus on that. And at this point, I don't think that matters in Star Citizen when I think about it, because they have so many people on the development team, and they have somebody doing the flight system, they have someone doing the ships, they have those separate elements.
Yep.
But you almost wonder if early on, if they would have just focused more on the one ship, you know, maybe just the Hornet, and then went and did, you know, this and this and that. But it's all like a big circle of, you know, this happened because of that, because at the same time, you know, they had the Aurora, which was the, you know, the lower level backer ship, so they had to make that. And at the end of the day, the ships have made them the money that they now have to make the game. So
yeah,
as much as it does sort of bother me to see all these ships being released and, you know, the Gladius just coming out and all of this stuff, and then the game is still at its state, I guess I really can't actually use it as a valid complaint. I hope that that you know, what I'm saying isn't true, and that they're fine, you know, they're doing just right, and the progress that they're at is the stage they would have been at regardless of whether or not they focused on those ships. So
yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's basically like, you know, it's as long as it is short. You know, it's like, you know, they've got their way of working, and but I think it's always important to kind of question these things and think about and put those sort of statements out and say, well, look, you know, do we think that they're doing the right thing? Are they working in the right way? Would we rather see more of a focus on this? You know, and it's good to always have those discussions out there and just put those comments out there. And I think that's what you want to do going forward through all of the different things that they're going to be making and changing and editing. Is, you know, I mean, currently they keep working on all these different hangars. I currently sort of personally semi-question the validity of that. You know, they're remaking the deluxe hangar. It's great that they're doing that, but I personally myself don't necessarily feel that's really a priority. I know people don't like the darkness of the current deluxe hangar, but for me that seriously is not a very important thing right now. I know that they are working on changing that up, and yeah, we know for a fact that they have obviously different people working in different areas. Just to kind of use an analogy, people were saying with Battlefield 4 when that first came out, and there's a lot of issues there, and people were saying, like, you know, why don't you put more people, you know, stop developing the DLCs, put those guys into fixing the game. And it's like, guys, that's not how it works. They have people in different departments working different things. You can't just take those guys and make them fix, you know, put more time in. And so I'm pretty sure that's how it is with Star Citizen, is that, you know, right now they have guys working on these other sections, and they're going to be working on that stuff from now until release, you know, so they're never going to be able to kind of dedicate time into other areas. So I think that's the kind of reference point you have to use for that kind of stuff, and it's important for everyone to just be aware of that and keep it in mind when we're thinking about the development process.
All right, yeah, and at the end of the day, you know, as much as I sit there and I make videos and, like, you know, we're gonna discuss this and complain about this, I've said this before, you know, I still am more than happy to throw, you know, money at this game, because when you look at what's coming out, and I'm not usually one to hate on the AAA titles, but there is just a lot of rehashed AAA, and SC, you know, CIG, Chris Roberts, they're over here trying to do something special, and I can support that, you know, even if it fails, I would be, you know, extremely stoked at the end of the day for that. But thank you guys for joining us, Luetin. Thank you for having me on, man. If you guys have any more questions, or you had any sort of you know, comments you wanted to make about any of the things we discussed here in this video, there's anything you'd like to see us discuss regarding Star Citizen in the future, feel free to let us know in the comment section below. See you guys in the next one.